Hello everyone, and welcome back to what I think will be the last episode of this week's series. This lecture is a little bit on the lengthier side, but there's a lot of information that's very similar to each other, so I'm not sure if I'm going to split it or how I'm going to split it if I do. But anyway, in our first video for this week, we examined the definition of the family as well as the different types of family structures that can occur regarding either the descent of the family, who has the power, but also the culture, or even the location of a family, which is something that I failed to mention prior. But the location of a family can also have a big impact, especially from an interactions point of view, taking in our theory of how we interact with our extended family, for instance, or even just within our nuclear family and the interdependence that occurs within that if you're away from everybody else in a family. In all of these different types of family structures, be sure to kind of think about the patriarchy, the matriarchy, or even the egalitarian or equal perspective, as that kind of shows up on the quiz for this week quite a bit. And then in our second video for this week, we examined the different theoretical perspectives and how they view the family. So with the functionalist perspective, seeing how the family stabilizes society, thinking about that socialization aspect of it. Conflict theorists, examining that inequality that just is basically kind of continues throughout the cycle because families are kind of just stuck in that rut due to social mobility. Interactionist perspective, examining the different relationships among family members and how complex family really is. And then the feminist theory, examining those gender roles. And this video's topic is going to continue the statistics train a little bit with examining statistics in regards to marriage and divorce rates and cohabitation and things like that. But we're first actually going to be starting off with something that I'm pretty excited to talk about because this is what my master's thesis was in, which is basically mate selection, finding a significant other, but also the other different opportunities and relationships that we are encountering in the 21st century. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start off with that. And if we were in class in person together, I would ask you guys, what are some important features that you, if you don't have a significant other, you would look for in this person? Or if you have a significant other, maybe aspects of them that you find extremely important for your relationship. So kind of ponder that for a couple seconds about different traits or characteristics or something like that. And in the past, this is what some of my classes have come up with. You kind of searching for that click, perhaps, common interests, complementary traits, ability to have conversations was a big one. We talk about communication a lot and how communication is the #1 factor in whether or not a relationship is good or bad or why it breaks up. Communication is usually traced back to that. The ability or willingness to invest time, being kind. Trust is a major one in relationships and is actually one of the 3 foundations of a relationship to be successful. Honesty, humor, as well as being adventurous for some people, or perhaps not so adventurous. So these are just a couple of things to kind of get your brain cooking on, thinking about relationships. And these traits too, it doesn't necessarily have to be about a significant other either. You could also be talking about your best friend. You want to have a best friend that really clicks with you, right? Or just a friend in general, or just being able to talk to somebody. And even some of these character traits or characteristics you want to have in a coworker, for instance, as well. So not necessarily just your significant other, although when we think about relationships, relationships are kind of what our brain kind of defaults to are romantic relationships. But when we say relationships, we actually just mean anybody that we come into contact with and form a meaningful bond, or maybe an even not so meaningful bond with. We just come into contact with people. And in thinking about significant others and getting married in particular, which is what we're going to be examining now, There are some people who don't want to get married, and that is completely okay. And 1 in 7 don't want to get married. And you can kind of see the statistics from the Pew Research Center with that. And some people aren't very sure, where it's just about a little bit less than 60% want to get married someday. And what must be some reasons as to these statistics, right? Maybe not getting married. Kind of think about it in your head a little bit as to why people might not want to get married. And a couple of them is being independent. Some people really value that independence. They don't really want to rely on anyone. So they're completely fine being by themselves. Another one is financial security. And this can kind of go either way. You might need financial security by marrying someone, or you have financial security yourself and you're able to rely on you and be self-sustaining. So marriage really isn't a big factor. Back in the olden days, marrying for financial reasons was one of the major reasons as to why people got married. Women had what was called a dowry that the husband would get from the bride's family in exchange for her marrying off to that family. And usually it was some type of investment or money or something like that. And that's why people wanted to marry her. It wasn't for her, but it was for her dowry in many instances. So there's that aspect as well. And then for some people who might not want to get married right now, is usually what we hear about is about that difference in wanting to get an education first, and then having a kind of a career and settling down, and then finally getting married, or then finally having kids and things like that. You can kind of see here on the graph to the right. Let me just get my marker out real quick. The relationships between the percentage of U.S. adults ages 25 and older who are married via the type of education that they have. So you can kind of see between 1990 and 2015. Those are the bachelor's degree. It's about kind of similar, 69 to 65% of adults who are married by 25 and older with their bachelor's or higher. That's important too, or higher. Down 67 to 55% for some college, and then those who have high school or less are kind of dropping off here, which is very interesting to examine. Marriage can also be examined globally, right? We haven't really talked about the global instances of family or relationships just yet, but you can also examine marriage from a median perspective. So for those of you who don't remember in their math classes, median is just basically when, in regards to this, we're going to put all the ages in order. So from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we're going to find the middle of that age for that age of first marriage. So where it's like kind of a 50-50 split. And so the upper bars on this graph are women, and then the bottom ones are men. And then their median age is on the right there for you to see. So you can really see here in India how they always talk about the marriage rate down there. The median age for women is at 17, and then with men is 23.7. So, which is very crazy to think about when you compare it to, say, the US, because women, from a median standpoint, are getting married about 27, and then men is around 29. And then you have Australia, Canada, and Finland kind of being a little bit older than that for both genders, respectively. So it's rather interesting to kind of see how different countries and their median and their societies really have an impact on when they're getting married. This has all kind of different effects on the society as well. And then here's a closer look at median age at first marriage in the US, dating back from 1890 to the present. It's important to note here that from 1890 to 1940 is utilizing the census data. And then from there, it kind of supplemented another survey from 1947 to 2019, just to give you an idea about your sources. And then with 2019's estimate, that also included same-sex married couples. So adding that into our statistics as well, so that more of a little bit of an inclusion, and thinking about it from an interactionist perspective, demonstrating how complex just looking at marriages are too, right? So we can kind of see from here, and we have the year at the bottom down here, and we have age in years up here. And again, we're looking at the median, so 50% of women at first marriage are 28 years of age. It's kind of like the middle standpoint. In 2019 versus around 20, a little bit less than 30 in 2019 for men. So you can kind of really see how from really around here, so 1975-ish and up, it's kind of a steady hike, and then kind of right here in the mid 2000s, that's right around the recession area. So the marriage age dipped a little bit, which is rather interesting. This is a really bad straight line. And then it's kind of climbing more and more within the 21st century. So, and thinking about marriage and thinking about the relationships for a significant other, if you don't want marriage, how do you even find a person, right? So in the past, you would network. You would meet it through your family, your friends, the neighborhood, or your workplace. So networking was really big. For those Hamilton fans out there, you got in 1780 a winter's ball, and the Schuyler sisters were the envy of all. So they had balls that you would go in and kind of mingle and meet people as you're dancing or just chilling out by the punch or whatever they had, or and in those different social situations, you'd also go out for walks in parks and things like that to kind of meet people that way. That's not just not in America either. Over in England, they also had different balls and different dinners and things like that, and that was just one of the ways that all the eligible bachelors and bachelorettes would kind of meet together. You have a whole entire season in London, for instance, where people would flock to London in order to start the season, which is just basically a whole entire matchmaking season of, or time period rather, of meeting people and trying to kind of marry. You can kind of see this in Bridgerton, that came out on Netflix a little bit. While Bridgerton, here's some spoilers, I guess, so to speak, like it kind of centers around Daphne and her not wanting to get married aspect of it, whereas like the queen, yeah, it's the queen kind of dictates her as the crown jewel, so she's kind of the top prize to get at that season. It was kind of similar to that, but not as not reality TV show, but not as drama like there. So that was one way of meeting people. But another way that I thought was kind of interesting was they also would use newspapers and classifieds, I guess, in order to find a match. So I found this in a newspaper, and it says, "Chance for a spinster. A young man in Aroostook County, Maine, advertising for a wife, speaks of himself as follows. I am 18 years old, have a good set of teeth, and believe in Andy Johnson, the Star-Spangled Banner, and the 4th of July. Andy Johnson's Andrew Johnson, one of the president at the time. I have taken up a state lot, cleared up 18 acres last year, and seeded 10 of it down. My buckwheat looks first rate, and the oats and potatoes are bully, which is plentiful. I have got 9 sheep, a 2-year-old bull, and 2 heifers, besides a house and a barn. I want to get married. I want to buy bread and butter, hoop skirts, and waterfalls for some person of the female persuasion during life. That's what's the matter with me, but I don't know how to do it. So I just thought this was super cute. I don't know. Just seeing how back in 1865, this person thinks he's super old, and what a spinster is basically a person who is considered to be too old for marriage or too old to like start courting, which courting is just basically kind of dating in a sense, but not as we know it today. So at 18, this guy is already thinking that he's not going to find a wife. However, he has pretty good teeth. He knows politics a little bit, lives in America, has a lot of land, so financially and thinking about that way, having a farm. And he wants to kind of spoil his girl with all sorts of different things, with clothing and bread and butter. So just very interesting in seeing how some things kind of are timeless, I guess, so to speak. I don't know. Hopefully you found that as cute as I did. And then you got today with all of the different types of apps that you can go on, and instead of just reading things, we swipe at pictures. I mean, you can read profiles, but for some of these, they're designed to just look at pictures. This is actually what I also researched too, is seeing how do we communicate with our swipes once we're matched. I did that back in my grad school for my communication classes. And then I also examined the impacts of casual sex and that kind of, and friends with benefits and those types of relationships and how they impacted a person's network, so the relationships around them, as well as just the quality of that relationship as people were experiencing different casual sex partners or friends with benefit or romantic partner too. So all that's kind of up my alley. And in thinking about the swipe culture, this is also from the Pew Research Center, and seeing how what the percentage of people are like when they've ever used a dating site or an app, which is this column right here if we're looking at the chart, and then ever been married or in a committed relationship with someone that they met on a dating site or app. So at the time that this was collected, which was in 2019, about 30%, so almost a third of US adults used a dating site or app to try to find a significant other. And then you kind of see it broken down by gender, age, race, ethnicity, orientation, and then also education. And then you can kind of see how a lot of the younger people are using these apps. Third of men. Race-wise, it's pretty equal, which is really interesting. For once, there's there's equality there. And then you can kind of see how a lot of the LGBTQ members are using apps in order to find people. It's just lesbian, gay, or bisexual. I'm sorry, it does not include the others. And seeing how, and thinking about their use, since over half of those who surveyed used it, that would make sense due to the lack of access a lot of people in that community have to meet new people that are like them, and the safety issues and things like that within that community too. It's also interesting to examine education-wise. High school or less is way down here versus college or more than college is about a third. So, and some aspects with that. We would brainstorm in class with that. But I might also have you guys do a discussion question about that and talk about some of the interesting statistics that you guys have seen within this lecture series and examining that. But I just thought this was a rather interesting table to show you guys regarding that, and how times have really changed from meeting people at a ball or I guess a newspaper is kind of similar to a swipe app in a sense that you can just not read the newspaper, but I could go on and rant about swipe culture for days. I'm trying to restrain myself about it, but in singing too, I'm interested in examining the loneliness that people feel while being on these apps and just swiping and swiping and swiping and not getting matches that are what they want due to the different algorithms or the amount of bots that are on them, the fake profilers and catfishing and all of that fun, but not so fun stuff. So that's just one aspect of how we find significant others nowadays. And then you can also see on the right hand side how people have been married or been in a committed relationship with somebody that they've met on the app, and how those are less than obviously the people who have used it, since it's very difficult to find that type of relationship, at least for a lot of people. But I'm going to stop it right there since I'm already 20 minutes in, and I like to keep these in short things, so I lied in my intro. We'll kind of continue on in the next section examining cohabitation and different types of marriages and things like that. So I'll see you next time, and hopefully you found this rather interesting.